All right, Raiders Nation, we're back with another update and a topic that's been buzzing nonstop. If you've been paying attention to the college football playoffs, you know there's one name that keeps coming up when people talk about the Raiders' future at quarterback, Fernando Mendoza. And honestly, after watching him lead Indiana the way he did, I don't just think he's a good prospect. I think he's the kind of leader this franchise has been missing for years. The way he plays, the way he carries himself, the way he refuses to be denied, it's everything you want in a guy you build a team around. Now, let's be real for a second. I know some of you are going to look at the stat sheet and say, Mitch, he only threw for 168 yards, 16 of 27. And sure, if you're the type of fan who only trusts numbers, you might not see the full picture. But football isn't played on paper. Football is played on the field, and Mendoza's performance in that game was the definition of calm, controlled, competitive. The guy stepped up when it mattered most, and he didn't just make plays, he made the right plays. That 4th and 5 touchdown run, that wasn't just athleticism. That was a statement. That was a quarterback saying, I am not backing down. I'm going to do whatever it takes to win. And you can feel it. When Mendoza says he would die for his teammates, you believe him. Because that's the energy he brings every single snap. He's not a guy who's looking for highlight reels. He's a guy who's looking for wins. And that kind of mentality is contagious. It spreads through a locker room. It makes other players better. It makes coaches trust you. It makes a franchise feel like it finally has a backbone again. And if you've been a Raiders fan for the last decade, you know how badly this team needs that. But here's the part that really got people talking. Mark Davis was at that game. He wasn't just there as a casual viewer. He was watching Mendoza closely. And it wasn't just Mark. There were photos, videos, and multiple reports showing that Tom Brady was in attendance. John Spycheck was there, and even other coaching candidates were in the building. You had Raiders ownership and the top decision-makers in the same stadium, all with their eyes locked on the same player. That's not a coincidence. That's not a random scouting trip. That's a franchise doing its due diligence for the biggest decision it has to make in years. And look, I've seen people try to dismiss it, saying it's just another game, or they always watch prospects. But this wasn't just a prospect. This was the potential number 1 overall pick. If you're the owner of the Raiders and you're sitting on the first pick, you don't miss a chance to see the guy who could change the entire direction of the franchise. That's what this is. This is the Raiders trying to make sure they don't mess this up again. Because let's be honest, they've had plenty of chances to get it right, and they've squandered them. Now let's talk about the quarterback situation itself. We all know the Raiders need a quarterback. Geno Smith is likely gone. He's already cleaned up his social media, and you can tell he's preparing for a fresh start somewhere else. And Kenny Pickett, he's going to hit free agency too. So if the Raiders aren't drafting a quarterback, and they're not trading for a superstar, then who exactly is supposed to lead this team? You can't rely on Aiden O'Connell as your starter. That's not a long-term solution. That's not how you build a franchise. So if you want stability, if you want a real plan, the answer is simple. You draft the best quarterback in the class, and you build around him. And yes, there are rumors about Lamar Jackson. But let's be honest, the Raiders are not a guaranteed landing spot for him. And even if they were, is it the right move? Because if you don't want to trade for Jackson, and you don't want to pick Mendoza at number 1 overall, then what? You're going to keep repeating the same cycle of mediocre quarterbacks and wasted money. That's what the Raiders have been doing for years. And I think Mark Davis is tired of it. Which brings me to another point. The Raiders have a history of doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. That's the definition of insanity. But if you look at the last time the Raiders took a quarterback in the first round, it was Jamarcus Russell. And yeah, that pick still haunts people. It's like a scar that never fully heals. But here's the truth. Mendoza is nothing like Russell. Russell was a guy who got paid, got comfortable, and didn't care. Mendoza is the complete opposite. Mendoza is hungry. Mendoza is driven. Mendoza is the kind of player who makes everyone around him better. And think about the other quarterbacks the Raiders have brought in. Gardner Minshew, Geno Smith, Jimmy Garoppolo. These are guys who come in with a price tag and expectations, and then the team pays for a season of disappointment. The Raiders have been burning money on stopgap solutions, and it's time to stop. The best investment is the young guy who can grow with the team. A rookie quarterback means you can build the rest of the roster properly, fill in the offensive line, add weapons, improve the defense, and create a foundation that lasts for years. That's what a smart rebuild looks like. And with the roster the Raiders currently have, it makes sense to bet on a young leader like Mendoza. Now let's get into what I think might be the most convincing reason the Raiders end up with Fernando Mendoza. It's not just his talent or his competitiveness. It's his leadership. This is the kind of guy who doesn't just talk the talk, he walks the walk. And if you want to build a championship culture, you need a quarterback who can be the heart and soul of that culture. A guy who makes everyone else around him better. A guy who doesn't get rattled when the game is on the line. A guy who can be counted on to deliver when it matters most. When the Raiders hired Josh McDaniels, I said right away it was never going to work. Not because he isn't a smart coach, but because he wasn't a leader of men. And that's what you need at the top of your organization. You need a coach and a quarterback who can inspire the locker room, who can hold people accountable, and who can build a team identity. And when your captain is a guy like Geno Smith, that's not leadership. That's a team that is going to struggle to find direction. The 2025 Raiders felt like a team without a soul. They looked lost and they played like it. But look at Indiana. That team wasn't the most talented in the country, but they were the most disciplined, the most determined, and the most united. They went from being one of the worst programs to national champions in just 2 seasons. That's not luck. That's leadership. That's a quarterback who makes the people around him believe. And that's what Mendoza brings. He has that quiet confidence that doesn't need to be loud. He doesn't need to be the loudest guy in the room to be the leader. He just needs to show up, do his job, and let his actions speak for him. And yeah, you can point to other quarterbacks and say they're more athletic or have a stronger arm. Anthony Richardson is a freak athlete. Justin Herbert can throw a missile. Trevor Lawrence can run circles around defenders. But here's the thing. Talent doesn't always equal wins. And when the pressure is on, when the game is on the line, I want the guy with ice in his veins. I want the guy who doesn't panic. I want the guy who has that intangible ability to make the right decision, to take what the defense gives him, and to lead his team to victory. Mendoza is that guy. He might not be the flashiest quarterback in the draft, but he is the most consistent, the most reliable, and the most mentally tough. He doesn't need to force the ball. He doesn't need to make highlight plays. He just needs to win. And that's what he does. When you're talking about franchise quarterbacks, you're talking about guys who make everyone around them better. Guys who elevate the standard of the entire team. And Mendoza does that. He is the kind of quarterback who could take a team from average to elite simply by being the leader he is. Let's talk about the playoffs for a second. In the biggest games, when the stakes are the highest, Mendoza delivered. He had a 74% completion rate, 9 total touchdowns, and 0 turnovers. That's not a fluke. That's a quarterback who knows how to manage the game, who knows how to make smart decisions, and who knows how to protect the football. You can criticize his passing yards all you want, but that's not what winning football is about. Winning football is about making the plays you need to make when you need to make them. It's about getting the job done. And Mendoza did that. He proved he can win in the biggest moments, and that's exactly what the Raiders need. Now let's talk about the bigger picture. The Raiders have had 6 head coaches since 2021. That's insane. That's chaos. And if you're the next head coach, you want stability. You want to know you have time to build. You want to know you have a quarterback you can develop. And if you're the Raiders, drafting Mendoza at number 1 overall gives you that. It gives your new coach the confidence that he can build a system around a quarterback who is already proven to be a winner. It gives the team a direction. It gives the fans something to believe in. And here's the key. I think the Raiders are going to give their next coach a long-term deal. I think it will be a 5-year contract because that's the trend we're seeing around the league. And if you're a coach, the biggest thing you want is job security. You want to know you won't be fired after 1 season because the team has no quarterback and no direction. Drafting Mendoza gives the next coach that security. It tells him the organization is committed to building around a young quarterback. It tells him they're not looking for a quick fix. They're looking to build a contender. And this offseason, the Raiders have one of the most unique opportunities in the league. They have over $100 million in salary cap space. They have 10 draft picks, and they have the number 1 overall pick. That combination doesn't happen often. And if you pair Mendoza with the right supporting cast, you can set this franchise up for success right away. Imagine building an offensive line that protects him, adding weapons, building a running game with Ashton Gentry, and surrounding him with young playmakers on rookie contracts. That's the blueprint for a fast rebuild. That's the kind of plan that can take a team from struggling to competing in a short time. The Raiders have a chance to create synergy, and they need it. Because right now, the team feels like a collection of players without an identity. But if you bring in a leader like Mendoza, you can start to build a culture. You can start to build a team that plays with purpose. You can start to build a team that wins together. And that's what the Raiders have been missing for so long. So yeah, I believe Fernando Mendoza is the guy. I believe he is the quarterback the Raiders should build around. I believe he has the leadership, the mentality, and the winning DNA to be the face of this franchise. And I think this offseason is the perfect time for the Raiders to finally get it right. Now, I know there are people who will argue that Mendoza might not have the physical gifts of other quarterbacks, but I'm not convinced that's a problem, because the game is not won by who has the most physical talent. The game is won by who performs when it matters. The game is won by who makes the right decisions. The game is won by who can lead a team. And Mendoza has proven that he can do all of that. He has proven that he can win in the biggest moments. He has proven that he can manage a game and come out on top. And that's the kind of quarterback the Raiders need. When you look at the Raiders' situation, you have to be honest. We have been a bad team for a long time. We have been inconsistent. We have been unstable. But this year feels different. The pieces are there. The resources are there. The opportunity is there. And if the Raiders take advantage of this moment, they could be setting themselves up for something special. This is the kind of offseason where you can change the trajectory of a franchise. And I believe the Raiders are going to do it. So, why do I believe Fernando Mendoza is going to be a Raider? Because he is a leader, a winner, and a player who can change the culture. Because the Raiders need stability, and they need a quarterback who can bring it. Because the front office and the ownership are clearly paying attention. Because the resources are there to build around him. And because the opportunity is too big to ignore. The Raiders are at a turning point, and I believe Fernando Mendoza is the player who can take them to the next level. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. Your support helps us keep bringing you the latest updates on our Las Vegas Raiders. And don't be shy. Drop your thoughts on the news in the comments below. The Raiders' locker room is said to be simmering, and the whispers growing around the facility paint a picture of a franchise standing on a fault line. According to league chatter, influential voices from the heart of the defense are privately pushing ownership in the front office to make Antonio Pierce the permanent head coach, warning that failure to do so could trigger a silent revolt. Nothing is official, nothing is on the record, but the tone of the rumors suggests a team testing how far its leverage can reach. Pierce, currently holding the interim tag, has quickly become a symbolic figure inside the building. Players are said to view him as a cultural reset, someone who restored pride, accountability, and a sense of identity that many felt had been eroding. Defensive leaders, in particular, are rumored to believe that Pierce speaks their language, understands their sacrifices, and protects them publicly while demanding privately. In a league where trust is currency, that bond is reportedly strong. The speculation goes further. Some insiders claim that captains have discussed the possibility of withholding full cooperation if the organization looks elsewhere for a long-term solution. The word boycott has surfaced in hushed conversations, though no one seems eager to define what that would actually mean in practice. It could be as subtle as disengagement or as loud as public dissent, but even the hint of it is enough to unsettle decision-makers. From the outside, this looks like a classic power struggle between a locker room riding emotion and an organization weighing process. Front offices tend to fear decisions driven by sentiment, while players fear returning to instability after finally finding a voice they trust. The Raiders, long associated with rebellion and defiance, now appear to be living up to their mythology in a very modern way. Whether these rumors amount to genuine leverage or simply emotional venting remains to be seen. What is clear is that the Raiders are navigating more than a coaching evaluation. They are confronting a test of unity, authority, and identity. In this storm of speculation, Antonio Pierce stands at the center, not just as a coach, but as a symbol of what this locker room believes it has rediscovered and what it refuses to lose quietly. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to stay updated with exclusive news about our Las Vegas Raiders, be sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that like button. We can't wait to hear your thoughts in the comments. See you in the next video.